going to bring that shadowy area down into the neck and ruff now. And I am using, instead of bloodstone, I'm starting with a base of Payne's Gray instead. That's still too much on the brush. Brush is still too wet. If it's too wet, then you start seeing too much definition in the lines, and I want this to be very, very soft. So I switched to Payne's Gray because I wanted a difference between this shadow. I want some contrast between this and the shadowy darkness of the face. But I'm probably going to add, see over here, right this spot? That spot got a little bit too dark because I had too much liquid on my brush. So I'm just going to take off the pigment. So my brush is mostly clean right now, and I'm just trying to move that pigment around a little bit. It's a little damp on my brush, and that lets me sort of tickle the paper and wiggle the pigment around a little bit, because this Moulin de Roy is very smooth and liftable. Lifting is when the pigment moves around even after you've let it dry. And some pigments lift better than others. And some papers allow you to lift better than others. Moulin de Roy is one of those where lifting is extremely easy. See, so I managed to smooth that out. Now I'm going back to Bloodstone and actually layering in a little bit more. I want this, where the face meets the body, to be, there's a very subtle little bit of tone shift there. It's nothing that's going to be super defined, and so you have to play around with lifting and with darkening to get it just right. Here we go. Let's see if I can move that up closer to you. You see what I mean about it being this very velvety texture, and it's even more so in person when you see all the layered colors that can go into it. I've only layered a few colors into this. You saw me do the reddish bits around the edges of the face and then the darker blue in the center. But you can sort of see a little bit of that even in a video on the screen. Now, what will I do for the body of this cat? Switching to a larger brush. This is a size 1 round. Not that much larger for comparison, because I am going to be doing a bit of a wash. Now I'm getting buff titanium onto my brush. And I'm diluting it down and moving it over into my mixing dish so that I have a larger quantity of it prepared as I do this wash. And this isn't even a very large area, but if I were to do a piece with a very large area that I'm going to be painting, then you definitely want to do this where you pre-dilute your paint so that you have it ready and you can move quickly. You see that I'm moving much more quickly than I did with the dry brushing. And I'm not touching the area where I have the shadowy roof yet. I'll deal with that in a second. I'm going to do these other parts like the tail that are not connected up with that. Technically, I probably should have started off at the tail and moved up through the body because that leaves my forward edge wet. But I'm moving fast enough, and this is a small enough piece that it doesn't matter super much. All right, now I'm getting to this area where they're going to be touching, and so I'm wiping off excess liquid from my brush, and I'm not quite dry brush, but bristles are definitely closer to the drier end of things as I do this, because what I don't want is to have a lot of excess liquid that's going to pool into this upper shadowed area and result in a watermark area as the liquid dries. But if I keep things relatively dry to begin with, you don't end up having to deal with that. Back to dry brushing. Loading up my brush with Payne's Gray once more. And this is all dry now. That bit of a wash did not take long to dry at all. I'm going to start with the tip of the tail, and again, you see my bristles are spread out. They're not at a point. And this is what I want. And I use these very short, quick strokes. Another thing I am doing is that I am mostly going in the direction of the cat's fur. This is because you do see little bits of my brush strokes, and this helps to add to the textured effect of fur. And if you have these strokes going every which way, it can be distracting. So I sort of try to keep it in line with the texture of what I am painting. Now I'm going to switch over to a cobalt blue now. I want more of a lighter bluish tone in this area. That's why I switched over to cobalt blue. And I'm going to actually continue that cobalt blue off to the tip as well. I don't want the tip of the tail to be so dark grayish. I actually want this part to look more blue. I'm softening up the edges a little bit so that it has more of that smoky feel of fading into the surroundings, again like I was doing with the face and the head, although much more pronounced over here. More cobalt blue. As I deal with the paws. Keeping an edge of highlight now on the front edge of this closer leg. I want the back leg a little bit darker. I let this section get a little bit too dark, so doing that lifting again to try to spread the pigment out a little bit and smooth it. A little bit on the belly here. Switching back over to my larger brush, and I'm going to wet down this hindquarters area. Because I'm going to drop in some shading and let that bleed and spread a little bit. Make sure that the forward edge of where the pigment is, and by forward edge I mean whatever is interfacing to the dry areas that you're working into, and make sure that that is not too loaded down with water, but that it gradually, the liquid amount actually gradually fades into the surrounding area, and that helps to keep the pigment from drying in a visible line right up against the edge of where you've painted. If your liquid fades out, then the pigment has nowhere to travel quickly to. If you have a very wet splotch, then your pigment tends to travel quickly right out to the outer edges of it and pool up there, and that's when you get these splotchy looks to your painting. And sometimes that's actually what I want to do, but in this case, it's not. I want to have very smooth transitions. And I'm doing a bit of a wash directly onto this back area of the spine.